Alright, time for another DraftPhysics.com video presentation. I made a few comments and I think we'll just do a illustration of, how the universe works, kind of a simple diagram of how energy moves in the universe, that kind of thing. Hopefully. Sometimes we don't get too dragged down in this comment crap. But anyway, so Perspective Fact says, instead of saying physics arguments should be judged on their merits, right, which, what a merit is the whole problem, right? I mean, this exists everywhere in society. I mean, we're electing celebrities as governors and presidents and stuff, and that's really, that's really stupid. So merit doesn't often have anything to do, deserve doesn't have anything to do with the systems we have for attention in the world. That's just a sad fact. Some people say no who say no one who is not credentialed physicist should dispute claims of conventional physics. They're clearly obsessed with badges, okay? And it really, credentials should just mean, well, can you talk reasonably on the subject? Have you seen it? Have you watched the experiments? Have you something, whatever the standard would be? But there's no standard at all. They'll just conveniently use this excuse. So it really is just an excuse they use out of convenience, which would lead to a situation similar to if the only ones that made arguments about the claims of religion were the priests. So they clearly want to keep it an inside job. And they want to keep out, the bigger picture kind of arguments, because they really have committed themselves to a lot of wacky concepts in physics, especially. So, hey, dumbass. It's nice that you titled yourself properly. Nobody that I'm aware of says physics arguments should only be made by credentialed physicists. Well, I've run into it repeatedly publicly right on this channel. So that's kind of stupid. I mean, to make as an argument, it's kind of just lame, because it's kind of obvious of that evasion. I mean, A.B. Science couldn't be more explicit in his, you don't have the authority to question our physics. I mean, so it's certainly not a straw man. What they do is say that many who criticize physics do not understand the claims being made. Well, again, that's just baby talk. Some do, some don't, and they do to different levels. And especially when you consider how specialized your knowledge can be. Now, I would argue that I have specialized knowledge on the subject of kinetic energy and that I've read the history. And I would say, I could make the claim, quite obvious, I think a quite legitimate claim, that if you were to give people a test on the history of the kinetic energy formula, I would do much better on that test than 99% of degreed physicists, because they never studied it, they never looked into it, they never cared. And so that's just the truth. So on that specialty, I know more. I would say I know more on the double slit. I've watched more of them. I've researched more, looked at more patterns, analyzed how patterns are created, different circumstances. So I'd say I have more expertise on those subjects. So should I say they're not qualified to have an opinion? That's just bullshit. Or they reject the evidence supporting those claims. So that's the big one, right? Because it's all rejecting evidence, and the importance of evidence is all on your side. So that's the clear claim. This whole argument's over the minute you produce any evidence at all. Okay, produce some kind of evidence, and the whole argument just goes away. But you can't produce any kind of evidence. Zero kind of evidence. I mean, obviously, the Stephen Bro video is a ludicrous pile of shit as science, and the experiments are all suspect. Not only because they're filthy, okay, you wouldn't want to get near them, they look sticky and dusty, they suck as experiments. There's no backup to them. There's no proof of anything. There's no documentation of anything. It's just sloppy garbage science. Nobody, as a practicing scientist, could get away with doing experiments that sloppy and say, I'm a scientist. Wouldn't work. Can't happen. Wouldn't happen. So So there's no evidence. So, it's just such a joke. So, this is just such an evasion of the facts. They might as well just call it an overt lie. I mean, to claim there's some straw man here? No, this is exactly the evasion. Go on Quora and see all the pompous douchebags telling everybody, you don't understand. You don't understand. When they can't prove anything. They can't demonstrate anything. They can't answer the simple question. So, hey, dumbass, until you answer the question, all right, do you think a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour has half the energy of a 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour? Do you think the 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour would light more light bulbs? If you put a generator on the wheel and got the electricity out, do you think it'll light twice as many light bulbs? And that'll be the test of just how stupid you are. Because if you say yes, you're a moron. Because you have zero evidence indicating that's a fact. And of course, it creates ludicrous paradoxes where you just put lighter things on a spring and make free energy. So answer the questions or be known for the fraud you are. Talking out of your butthole. All right. So Captain Grub. Anyway, DraftScience, I have a stupid question. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's off subject. Well, no, actually it's on subject. It's a gravity video. But before you admonish me, let me give you a background. I don't know if I need that. I watched the shit ton of your videos, and I'm a fan, and I'm an artist with a degree in philosophy from a hippie college. So I have an interest in physics of a person who has no skin in the game. Well, saying something like that just doesn't, mean too much. I mean, the skin in anyone's game, talking about anything called the truth, everybody should have the same skin. Everybody should have the same investment in let's get right answers, not wrong answers. And let's certainly let statements get what they deserve. Okay, let's not make silly talk, profound. What I'm wondering is when gravity rains on you because you're big, so the elemental function is raining on you. Gravity isn't raining on you. Force is raining on you. It isn't turned into gravity until it rains on you. You slow it down, moving your matter, and it rains less on somebody else. And that's sort of the key, is you cause it to rain less on the bugs on your back, so to speak, or the bugs on your feet. All right. Isn't there some mechanism for differentiating size from density? It's just about mass. So it's about electrons and protons. So I've said this before, and I probably said it in that video, that, gravity just moves electrons and protons. There's only one universe, the little tiny universe. That's the one where everything happens, is the little universe. So when a big object is moved, it's only moved because all of its electrons and protons move. That's why everything moves the same in gravity, is because the only thing really being moved are electrons and protons, and they all move exactly the same because they all weigh the same. See, the electrons and protons all have this, all the electrons have the same mass, all the protons have the same mass. So they move consistently no matter where they are in gravity. So that's why gravity moves everything the same, is because the only thing actually moving are the things that all have the same mass, which are the electrons and protons. Okay, so density, yes, in a sense, but the point is that it's really just about how many elements of electron and proton you have. The more you have, the more to move. That means more energy will be absorbed moving those elements. So the more elements to absorb energy, and they absorb it essentially by forcing it to push them, the more deficit of energy there'll be in some other location, because you've occupied the energy moving you about, moving your electrons and protons about. Wouldn't density be more important than size in gravity? So size doesn't matter, density really doesn't matter. The point is if you hit, we'll do a quick drawing. Say if I have my mass in this shape, okay, or I have my mass in this shape, okay, and I'm in this field of energy coming down, and it's obviously coming from all directions, so blah, 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 but for the sake of this argument, the point is you're hitting something, okay, and moving it. And when you move this electron to here, well, that means you move this one here, because the same force is connecting these two. And it means you move this one here. So your momentum, the momentum of the force that moved the first electron, continues to move. Okay, so you can pile up more and more force, moving things faster and faster. But there's no, the mass doesn't matter where it's arranged. It doesn't matter how it's arranged in the field of gravity. The thing that's important is the little elements are going to collect it one way or another. They're going to collect it as a reflection, they're going to collect it as a consequence of this one moving, or they're going to collect it because it actually hits them personally. But one way or the other, they're going to collect the energy. So all the energy, depending on how much mass there is just going to get collected as motion in a direction by electrons moving slower than the speed of light. And it's the moving slower part that has created the deficit that something else will experience. You make gravity that other things are affected by. You are affected by gravity other things make. All right. Oh, Quintucker. Eesh. Hey, in Mendham, what do you think of the scientists who are talking or trying to create anti-gravity elements via combining matter and antimatter subatomic particles? So let's understand there is no such thing as antimatter. There's only anti-subatomic matter. And the whole theory of anti-anything is retarded and unevidenced, and it's more just Diracian crapola. Okay, the same the same bullshit place. You get electrons that can move through time. Dirac is famous for lots of crap. Okay, that's just fantasy physics. Doesn't have anything to do with reality. There's no, what are the anti-particles doing? I mean, how many times can I ask this simple question? I mean, where are they? If there's an anti-particle for every single particle, where are they all? What are they doing right now? Where do they fit in the atom? Where is the anti-electron inside the atom? It doesn't make any sense. Where are your positrons and your neutrinos and all this crap? Where is it? What is it doing? You have no model of it. It doesn't make any sense. And again, the only reason why it mathematically could possibly make sense is because of things like the kinetic energy formula, which is the actual subject of this video, and the fact that there's no where's if you're going to make twice as much energy, then you're going to think there's a whole bunch of other stuff happening because you've got this silly notion of all this extra energy you're creating. All right. Anyway, Fermilab just made a vid where the scientist was skeptical. Oh, isn't that charming? Fermilab, a place that invents all of these woo particles. But he mentioned that there was a difference in measuring gravitational mass from inertial mass. It's just absolutely silly. The word inertial is stupid. I mean, it really just isn't scientific at all. And gravitational mass, no, it's gravitational weight. You measure something's weight by a standard, by a mechanism of energy detection. That's how you measure weight. So we know gravity causes things to move. We measure their momentum to measure their weight, and then we calculate their mass from that consistent force. So once we know there's a consistent amount of energy somewhere, we stick matter in it, and then we see how much it's affected, and then we can tell how much mass there is. So if you want to know how much mass something has, you stick it in gravity, you see how much gravity affects it, and that'll tell you how many little elements of electron and proton there are. But you never really measure it directly, okay? But yes, all mass really is how many electrons and how many protons, and there isn't anything else to move. You don't ask how many neutrinos are in it. You don't bother wasting time with that nonsense. Let's see, I guess there's some more crap here. Gravitational mass and inertial mass, and that could yield different results regarding whether antimatter might have any anti-gravity potential. So again, gravity is created by gigantic matter on an insanely huge scope. So what I'm experiencing is in the deficit of force pushing this way versus force pushing this way has been created by thousands and thousands, 8,000 miles of dense matter. So huge amount of matter has created the gravity I'm falling in right now. Huge, gigantic. And you think they're just going to poof an anti to that? The anti-matter effect thingy, blah, blah, blah? No. We already have anti-gravity. It's called a rocket. And you see how much energy it takes to lift a kilogram. It takes a lot of energy to get a kilogram out of the potential, the gravitational potential. And you're really not getting it out of the gravitational potential. You're really just giving it enough velocity to stay in an orbit, right? Because actually getting it out of the potential takes even more energy. You know, to actually get away from, far enough away from the Earth where the gravity isn't an oppressive force. Anyway, I thought you might like to ponder. Now, why would I like to ponder? Absolutely. I've already demonstrated that this elemental physics is made up. This stupid whatever, I don't even know what to call this theoretical mush about, dark matter and dark energy and anti-particles. I don't even know what to call that unevidenced shit. I mean, that's just such a fantasy. And so you want to talk about, well, what do you think? Do you think Jesus wears Bermuda shorts in the summertime? Do you think he wears black socks or white socks? Do you? What do you think? I would waste time on that crap. Except when I'm a little bit stoned or I'm, I'd waste time on those frivolous, silly thoughts. But, I mean, there's just no science here, okay? This isn't science. This is little nerds, in a video matrix, in some sort of matrix of bullshit, okay? And, doing some sort of anime thoughtobation. This isn't real. Anyway, I thought you might like to ponder the possibility and impossibility of exotic anti-gravity elements. La, 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 la. If it's a real force, you're not going to undo it with nothing. Even if it was bent space, what do you think? You're just going to, we'll have a space unbender. Shit. Anyway, so, hey, dumbass says, I want to write a long comment explaining why you're wrong and don't know what you're talking about. Well, he didn't say anything. He just recited what the fun people told him. But Larry Page, who the fuck is that, wouldn't let me because people like you empowered him. What the fuck are you talking about? Fucking idiot. Ugh. God, So anyway, I'll get rid of this Quintucker comment. First, because he's an asshole. And second, it's not on the subject of the video. Come on. Come on. Can't you people just focus a little bit and say, let's get one subject done at a time? Here we have them on the hook on the kinetic energy thing. We have them overtly evading. They can't answer simple questions. Can't even come close. Can't produce one single piece of video evidence of kinetic energy being collected. Not one single fucking piece. And here you are talking about anti-gravity and antimatter. Fuck. Hopeless. Alright, so we'll just check and see if there's anything new. Whoops, didn't you did that twice. Well, that sure threw the browser off. I gave it terrible confusion. Is this guy for real? Wow, now that's clever. And he has the brilliant screen name of a dot. Well, we know we can get rid of this idiot. Alright, hey Gary, cool video. Oh, this is from the dot guy. By the way, your videos are causing a lot of pain and suffering. Okay, so I think we are done. To Alicia Shepherd fans, she's a god bother, right? I don't care. Okay, so this obviously doesn't have anything to do with physics, so we'll just say goodbye to Mr. Dot. Oh, fuck. And these are the people defending physics. I'm a science defender. This is what I do on the internet. Thank you, YouTube. Let's see. Okay, it's gone now. All right. So, I need to fix my eraser. So I'll be back. Alright, I'm back. Should be anyway. I won't bother checking. But I should be back. So anyway, so let's just start with a little piece of what we will call this energy stuff. Okay, it's moving the speed of light. So there's only two things in the universe. There's this stuff, and then there's this matter stuff. Okay, and we have it in two forms. So I'm not going to sit there and bother with colors to explain that, but there's an electron and there's a proton. There's two actors that are material in the play, and then there's two actors that are actually little arrows. So, whatever. Just imagine one of them's red and one of them's blue, and to match this red and blue, let's just say. But you don't need to know that to understand what's going to happen. You don't need it spelled out that literally. So what happens so this energy is moving through the whole universe, so you could just draw it like, some kind of symbol, like it's going every direction all the time. And in the universe, so it's just, the universe is full of it. It's the radio waves, the photons, all of that stuff is this stuff, and then this stuff that makes gravity is this stuff. And all right, so let's just follow what happens. So this is one version of what can happen, is that it's, let's say, a piece of this electron force, red, so we'll just stay all one color, and then we'll worry about two colors later, hits an electron. Well, if the electron's not moving, doesn't have a direction already built into it, then what's going to happen is this arrow is just going to stay right with this electron, and now that's what the universe will look like, is this moving this, and now it's going less than c. Okay, now it's less than the speed of light, so it's going much slower. Okay, now a little bit slower, a lot slower. And so instead of having something that was going the speed of light and would have been over here by now, you have something, okay, connected to something else, and now this thing is moving much slower in that direction. Okay, so that's one choice. Now if the force hits an electron that's already moving, and let's say it has a vector in, say, this direction, okay, say it's moving that way, it's moving with some element, okay, some portion of its velocity has an element in this direction, then what's going to happen is these two are going to just reflect. So it would be just like two kinetic balls hitting each other. They're basically just going to hit the matter, and the matter is going to be like, okay, it was a billiard ball, and it was stuck in between, and two other balls are going to hit at the same time, let's say, and what they're going to do is one's going to fly off and the other one's going to fly off, is essentially what's going to happen. They're just going to reflect off of each other as if there was nothing there. And so when something's being pushed, okay, it can be pushed by more than one piece of force, okay, and something else hits it, all you're really saying is that'll reflect and this will reflect. So in this universe, in this interaction, right, your end product is the matter will now not be moving. Let's say if it only had one little force bit pushing it. So it had one bit of force pushing it. It got hit by another bit in an opposite direction with a component in the opposite direction. And so now what's going to exist in the universe is now you have energy going that way, and you have energy going, let's say, this way. It's going to be a composite of the two motions. So you started with this. You started with a piece of energy going this way and a piece of matter, and you end up with a piece of force going this way, a piece of energy, and a piece of energy going that way. And now the matter is not moving at all. It's stopped. Okay. And so now something else can hit it and move it. Okay, but that's the basic mechanism in terms of the two choices. The choice is if it's moving and has a momentum against you, you're going to reflect energy. And if it's not moving, or it has motion in the same direction you're going, then you're just going to add to its motion. So if it already had an arrow going this way, you can stick another arrow going this way, and then you'll have a composite of double arrow, double vector, double momentum in that direction. But it's really made out of real force bits of real energy, little bits of energy moving the speed of light that actually interacts with the electron, sticks to it, and moves it. If it's moving against it, it reflects. So there's two choices. You can hit matter, okay, and move the matter, or you can hit matter and reflect. The energy reflects, and it causes a reflection this way. So those are your two choices. This is kind of like an explosion, right? So I mean, this hitting something that's already moving is kind of, this energy will be going in both directions, which is quite common in a lot of physics in terms of the equal and opposite reaction kind of theory. Okay. And this is sort of unmeasurable until, this idea of actually moving the piece of matter, it's kind of meaningless until you interact with another piece of matter and then cause a reflection, and the energy goes in the opposite direction because of the reflected energy. So in a sense, it's always going to reflect. So in a sense, you can only push. What did I do with the eraser? It's annoying. Oh, it's all the way down there. All right, let me pause. Go all the way down there and get it. All right, I'm back. All right, so real quickly, we'll just say if it's the opposite. So you have the electron energy and it hits a proton. The simple argument is it either goes straight right through and nothing happens at all, or it takes this right turn idea. The energy just goes out in a different direction. So your before and after, just as you had energy this way, and the after is you have energy going this way instead, but this doesn't move. The proton doesn't gain any momentum from the activity. And that'll explain the inverse relationship there exists between the poles of magnetism. So it's essentially, it's necessary as a piece of the physics to understand how you can have an opposite effect when it comes to stuff like magnetism, where you can send one force out and you can have an electron fly away and you have a proton move towards. But anyway, that is part of the subject I don't want to get into in this video. I want to just kind of concentrate on the moving electron thing. So when you move an electron, so you hit it with a force, now the electron's moving. And if it's moving in substance, well, that means it's going to move into another electron. And the key is that the electrons themselves have energy already trapped between them. So in between two electrons would be little pieces of the force. They're just moving back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, creating a pressure to push them away from each other. And the strength of that pressure will obviously be exactly proportional to how close they are to each other. If they're close to each other, you can understand that there's lots of impacts. If they're far away from each other, well, then there's only one impact. In the same amount of time, you have one impact. So you only have one element of pressure. And they're always moving the same speed, the speed of light, so they can only impose the same momentum. So in this circumstance, when they're far apart, there's only one momentum. In here, 1, 2, 3, there's 3 momentums hit this side. So there's more energy just by confining the space between the electrons. You automatically sort of create more pressure on the electrons. And what's happening through that whole process is, you have to understand, is that these little things are being exchanged. That is, one comes in here, hits it, sticks in this direction, right? Because it's going in that direction. Right? But if it's coming in this direction, if it's pushing in this direction, well, then we know it just automatically reflects. So now it's going to get to this, it's going to get back to this one even quicker. If I can push it and make it move in this direction, then this one doesn't feel the reflection for quite a while, because it won't be until a counterforce comes in and hits this direction before this one will reflect. It's a little bit complicated. You got to follow the bouncing ball, so to speak. I mean, so there's a lot going on in terms of things moving into things. Now, the key point I wanted to get to sort of was drag. And the fact is that this force, okay, when it's pushing, there's going to be, the energy is going to be dissipated over time into the field, because as you move one of these pieces of matter into the field of force, right, you're going to hit more opposing. So when you actually are moving and you're pushing an electron, you're pushing it into a half of the universe, right, that's hitting you more than this half, right? This half is hitting you less now because you're moving the same direction it is. You're going, you're going, I don't want to say with the current, because there's no current here. It's going both ways. So you can just understand that you're going to get hit by less stuff chasing you because you're going with it. So it's like you going with a bullet that's coming for you. It's going to get to you a little bit later than if you walk towards the guy shooting at you. Then the bullet's going to hit you sooner. So there is this definite drag that's going to essentially, you're going to give back reflections into this part of the universe at a higher rate than you're going to give reflections back to this side, that's for sure, and that's going to kill this progress. So slowly but surely, this energy, whatever this vector is, will be given by the little incremental motion of the electron. As it moves, it's going to give back little pieces of that momentum to this direction, okay, in the form of force, and not in the form of electrons moving anymore. And so that's the drag, okay, that's going to be, you're going to end up reconverting the motion of the electron into force. So it can't stay in the electron. The electron can't keep momentum. It can only be pushed for a certain period of time, and it runs out of the energy and it goes back into the environment as free energy or loose energy. So when this is happening on, the scale of atoms, and so you could sort of just understand you have a net positive in the center, you have the little negative electrons on the outside, and they're going to be doing most of the action. Because when you push on one electron, you essentially move it closer to the other electrons, create more pressure, causing them to move, which causes this one ultimately to move. So you're causing them all to move by pushing into one of them, you're pushing into all of them, and you're doing it by this drag mechanism, in the sense that when this one pushes to this one, pushes a little bit out this way, and then this one pushes a little bit in this way, and this one, that means it pushes on this one a little bit more because it moved in. And so it's all this stuff moving around, this pressure moving around, and as it's doing that, it's essentially a vibration. So you can sort of understand that what's really going to happen is the energy is going to essentially go this way. It's going to keep going that way, most of it. And it'll be affecting this. And so to say if you push on this electron, that ends up ultimately making this electron push out. The environment's going to push back, okay, and then that energy will go back this way, and then this side will push back, and that energy will go back this way. So that's the vibration you have of individual atoms. So when you think about a bunch of atoms, or there's a bunch of different atoms connected to each other, sharing electrons, and they literally share them. I should just draw that close. They literally share the electron, okay? It's literally shared. So you have these different atoms and molecules tied together, and then you cause this jiggling by hitting them with these little bits of force. What you're doing is causing all these atoms to vibrate. The energy inside of them is going to go from one side, then this electron goes out, and this, obviously it can't, the pressure of the proton, the pressure of the positive attraction overwhelms the force going this way and pushes it back this way. And that's essentially causing the reflection. And so this whole thing will just wobble. And what's happening as it's wobbling, as it's vibrating? Well, every time the electron moves from this position, if the electron goes from here to here, keeps jumping from these two positions, you could understand that this field here and this field here are going to notice that change, because nothing's going to reflect. So when the electron's moving this way, less reflections this way. When the electron's moving this way, certainly less reflections that way. So if I move fast enough away from you, I'm invisible. If I move fast enough towards you, I'm incredibly powerful, because every single photon along the path, I collect all of them as reflections, and I can push them into you all at once. So depending on how fast you can move these electrons, this jiggling, this vibration, that will die down. So the whole point is this is the ringing part of the wave theory. It's not really a wave or a ring. All you're really doing is saying, yes, the drag will eventually throw the energy back into the environment, but it will vibrate for a while. The atom will be vibrated by disruptions, and the energy will bounce back and forth, and as it bounces back and forth, it's basically sending a signal to the external world. More reflections, less reflections, more reflections, less reflections, more reflections, less reflections. And that's your frequency of radiation. That is your photon. So your photon is essentially created by the fact that more bits of force will exist in one location than will exist in this location, and there'll be more in this location. So I can put 2 here, and put 2 here, and 3 here. So there's always at the ringing frequency. And every atom will be doing that, and that will create the polarization, because like only one of this, one ring here will be part of the photon, and a ring from another atom over here will be another piece of the photon, another ring from another atom over here will be another piece, and they're all separated by a consistent distance, and that's because of the geometry of the materials. And that's what you're going to see as photons, is the fact that there is a geometry, there is a vibration, and so you're just changing what's in the field, and the distance is really proportional to how fast electricity, for example, travels through the atoms, and that tells you, that's the whole antenna polarization thing, which I've already gone through. So, clearly there's lots of the point is this is it's all elemental. All you have is the electrons and the force, the protons and the force. That's all you have. So you have stuff moving the speed of light, electrons and protons moving some speed less than that. Like a gamma ray behind an electron probably gets the electron pretty close to the speed of light. So you would say if one little force bit hits it, it's going 10% of the speed of light. If two force bits hits it, then it's going whatever, 20%, and then 30, 40, 50. And so gamma rays or cosmic rays, things that have a very tight frequency, is essentially just saying I'm popping them on top of each other, and the fastest I can reflect those is to hit them with essentially something that bangs into it really quickly, one right after the other. So it's almost like the only way to release the gamma ray force at the gamma ray speed is to release it with another gamma ray, is to plow another gamma ray in. But if you hit it with regular photons, of a much lower frequency, well, then you'll reflect these pieces off at the same frequency that came in, not at the frequency they're at. So a gamma ray is going to reflect as perhaps two ultraviolets, or it's the same number of bits, but they'll be at a different frequency, because the energy that's going to cause them to reflect is going to be obviously moving slower frequency. It's going to come less often. And so the reflections will happen at the rate of the reflecting. Force causing the reflection is going to decide the frequency of the gamma ray's reflection. So the gamma ray ends up reflecting at the frequency of the force it ran into. Oh, complicated way of saying it. Combined with the speed of the electron, the actual speed that the electron gets up to. All right, so I don't know if there's much, I don't know if there's much point in trying to do a simple diagram, just because obviously the simple diagram gets complicated very quickly. I just wanted to get to the point of it's a really key thing to understand, is this idea that the electrons are sitting in space and they're constantly telling you where they are. So this whole entanglement argument and those kind of things are kind of silly, because all the time it's getting hit by all these forces, interacting with the entire universe, the force of gravity, the force that causes gravity. All of this energy is hitting it all the time. It's constantly being rebalanced in its position in the universe. And every time it moves in one of these directions, it's obviously going to do something very different to that side of the universe than it did to this one at that exact moment. So you could just sort of understand you could argue that's the existence of the antiparticle, is just the fact that, okay, if the, sure, because a little bit running low, little technical dish, come on, cooperate. Don't cooperate. I don't care. I'll endeavor to persevere. Either way, Chalk, I'm going to endeavor to persevere. So what was I going to argue? What was I talking about? Any hints? Yeah, it was something about the movement, right? So if it's moving this way, okay, then it's going to be creating extra force reflecting. So you'll have arrow here. And this side, no reflection, so no arrow. And then you'll have, as it goes the opposite direction, after it gets hit, then there's no arrow going this way, so it gets the empty space. This side has the empty space, and then this side's not going to get the arrow. So the exact opposite photon would be created, with the opposite phase. So the two would be completely out of phase with each other, and that's what they see, in experiments. you shoot the energy in, you get two photons coming out at the exact opposite angles, you know. And that would be the reason is because of this motion is going to cause the two photons to be 180 degrees or whatever, yeah, out of phase. I guess 90 degrees when you're talking about phase. When one's on, the other one's got the off. When the other one's on, the other one's got the, you know, just inverted photons in terms of out of phase. Yeah, and so you can understand that that's obviously constantly everything that's affecting something this way, they're also affecting the other universe the other way. The back of them is also affecting the universe. So you never, you know, when you're doing something that looks active this way, you're still doing something to the other universe that's still action. Okay, non-action is action. You know, you can't stop being relevant. All right, so yeah, I just want. Okay, so the entanglement thing, I just want to clarify that, you know, if you really understand it, the electrons and protons are not in some quiet universe. They're always getting hit, constantly being hit by stuff, and there would be no capacity for them to be unobserved by the fact that something's hitting them and reflecting something to the universe, that there is a photograph of them essentially being created in all kinds of locations. We just don't have a camera able to see it, but it's there. They have a location in space. They're not in some, you know, ambiguous blob of uncertainty. There's no uncertainty in the reality. There's only uncertainty in our ability to perceive the reality. Yeah, and that's just so obvious, and it's just so disgusting, sad, pitiful, that physics has chosen to assert that no, it's not that we can't not see it. It's not that it's invisible to our perception. It's that it actually is wacky and irrational and illogical and non-mechanical, essentially. That really is a non-mechanical, random controlled, you know. So it's just the creation of some kind of random God. You know, they're so obsessed with re-injecting superpowers and super characters, so they don't even give it any character. They just say there's a retard in charge of the universe. And it's just no point in it. But anyway, I mean, the universe is retarded, don't get me wrong. It doesn't have a brain. But there's no, you know, there's no player, you know, playing. Anyway, so I think that's probably enough of a video. I would like to stay on the subject of kinetic energy just because it's so obvious and so overt and so plainly wrong. And once we get this door opened, once we break through, this will be the breakthrough subject. Once you once you break the facade, once you show that all their physics is just made out of stories and it's not really made out of evidence and logic, you know, then it'll all come tumbling down. But we got to break that door first. I say we because I guess, you know, the point is until more than just me is talking to the wind, they're not going to respond, you know, until you people harass them and pressure them to do it, because they're not going to do it because I say so. They're not afraid of my tiny little whispering voice in the wilderness. And that's just a sad fact. So we somehow have to get somebody with a louder voice to say it or something, but got to apply some other strategy. Money, I really thought the money would work. I mean, $2,000 is it's a pretty good hunk of money. You know, I really can't. I guess I just can't imagine being so rich that $2,000 would be meaningless. I wouldn't, you know, be willing to hop up and down a few hundred times for that kind of money. And so I thought that would be pretty good incentive, but nope. Anyway, until the next time and such. Yeah, there's not much else to say. So, yes, till the next time and such. Okay, this has been a Draft Science and Draft Physics in reality on the internet video presentation. Thank you for your attention and such.